Hi, friends. All right, there it is. The dead corpse of Craig. He was a good dude. R.I.P. Craig. Oh, wait, oops. I read that wrong. Today we're going to talk about everyone's favorite guard regiment, the Death Corps of Krieg. The Death Corps of Krieg are excellent warriors and are one of the best, if not the best guard regiments in the entire galaxy. They're also one of the most overrated factions in the entire galaxy. Let's get into Death Corps of Krieg. Basically, shovel, shovel, shovel. I love World War One. Oh boy, a tank. Fix bayonets, fella. I just feel so bad for what my great grandpa did, and I think the only way I can atone for it is to die in a random minefield, you know? Of course, I'm just kidding. But of all the factions in lore, Krieg are perhaps one of the most squandered by dumbass Reddit memes and misinformation. But today I will show you the real lore and how they're actually much cooler than some suicidal shovel files. So let's get into the World War love child, unrelenting masters of attrition, the Kriegsmen. The Death Corps of Krieg originated on the lovely world of Krieg. And unlike other planets named after war or war derivatives, I'm not even joking this time around. Krieg was a beautiful and prosperous world that was an industrial powerhouse with prosperous trading. But the grand prosperity would become its undoing. The rich, corrupt autocrats of the world were like, ho ho ho, much like the glorious God Emperor of mankind, I am certainly rich and powerful. Wait. And thus, the autocrats of Krieg, led by a chairman who shall not be named, began their takeover of Krieg and succession from the Imperium. The rebelling forces took over most of the planet relatively quickly, and the only real Imperial holdout was on High Farograd, thanks to the effort of the Krieg 83rd and their glorious leader, the soon-to-be legendary Colonel Yurton. Yurton and his loyalist forces were vastly outnumbered with no hopes of reinforcements since no nearby Imperial forces were available. Yurton was told to hold Krieg at all costs by any means necessary. So basically, the Imperium pulled a restaurant manager during rush hour, telling Yurton, "Oh, sorry, we can't help you here, but good luck, have a fun time." And so Yurden and the boys put up one hell of a defense, but they soon realized that this was a battle they would not win. Magos Griel, an advisor and ally to Yurden, suggested that he use some forbidden arcane dark agent technology hidden deep below Farograd, known as huge-ass nuclear bombs. At first, Yurden was hesitant to unleash these weapons since he knew it would almost certainly ravage his homeworld for generations to come, and his other commanders were horrified at this prospect. Some people even sent warnings to the chairman, but he said, "I'm the chairman, not the listen to warnings and quit man." And those warnings quickly went to deaf ears. However, with some goading from Griel and figuring that if the Emperor can't have Krieg, then no one can, Yurden put his plan into motion and prepared the nuclear missiles. Missiles, eh? Kinda like rockets. While nuclear rockets certainly aren't good, you know what is? Today's sponsor, Rocket Money. Rocket Money is an all-in-one personal finance app that helps lower bills, cancel subscriptions, and manage your money better. I've personally been utilizing its budgeting features to, well, budget. It's been helpful to me budgeting my school, food, investments, bills, channel expenses, and, of course, minis. With Rocket Money, I set a customized budget to keep track of my spendings, and the app detects when I spend in order to provide insights on how to budget better. This is especially helpful in curbing my ever-growing pile of shame. Another awesome perk to budgeting that us 40k players may not be privy to is it saves money. With premium features like automated savings, Rocket Money has helped its customers save up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. To save money and spend less, join the over 5 million members using Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/crackduck or click the link in the description to get started for free. Thank you to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video. Anyways, back to the less savory rockets. On the day of the Feast of the Emperor's Ascension, which is basically 40k Christmas, Yurden unleashed a crap load of nuclear missiles. Nuclear bombs in the present day are pretty nutty, and Dark Agent technology is like peak nuttiness, so needless to say, these nuclear bombs that Yurden shot were pretty damn nutty. The colonel knew that the payloads were overkill, so he had them detonate in atmosphere in hopes of making the apocalyptic damage a little less apocalyptic, which honestly didn't really help in not completely destroying the planet. The nukes bathed Krieg's atmosphere with nuclear hellfire, caused planet-wide storms, and completely annihilated the local ecosystem. The planet was plunged into a nuclear winter, and billions died from the attack. Merry Christmas, heretics. At least it wasn't coal, I guess. Also, once again, nuclear is better than coal. This nuclear strike put the Loyalists and rebels on equal footing since Yurden's forces were prepared for the strike and took refuge in underground fallout shelters. Wait, Fallout? Is this some kind of guy from Fortnite reference? So, in nuclear annihilation, the Loyalists found hope. Said hope was promptly crushed when the Imperials let Yurden know they would definitely not be sending reinforcements now that the planet was worthless. What? I thought you wanted Krieg. Well, yeah, I did, but that was before it was a nuclear trash heap. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Uh-huh. So, once again, the Loyalists were on their own. The war progressed into a brutal war of attrition defined by its vast trench warfare. Oh my god, trenches! That means shovels! Wah! And yes, speaking of shovels, Kriegers of course use shovels as it's a useful tool, and it's feasible that they may use one as an improvised weapon once in a while. And it would be a pretty cool piece of flavoring since actual World War soldiers used shovels in trenches when bayoneted rifles proved too unwieldy. However, this does not mean that the Krieg's favorite weapon is a damn shovel, and it doesn't mean that they're gonna go shovel a tank the second the opportunity arises. It's just such a dumb meme that literally has no basis in lore, and it represents why I feel the misconceptions of Krieg lessen the faction so much. It's a cool and interesting idea, parroted into stupidity, thus diminishing itself into surface level trash. But anyways, in this time, Yurden's forces were beginning to be molded into the legendary Death Corps we know and love today. They adapted to the absolutely inhospitable hellscape of Krieg, became masters of attrition warfare, and of course, created their iconic Death Riders, which proved instrumental in the war. The Death Riders arose as the Loyalists needed fast cavalry and their mechanized options were beginning to fail in the Long War. So, the Mechanicus Biologists heavily modified some horses into the freaks you see before you now. These freaks were harder, better, faster, stronger than normal horses and had freakish claws that allowed them to tread the wasteland terrains, extra organs to survive the acrid atmosphere, and psycho injections to make them obedient, fearless, and more aggressive. So, these horses fulfilled similar roles as Sentinels and are surprisingly close in durability due to their extensive enhancements. But, due to the extensive enhancements, the rider has to constantly monitor their steed and inject drugs to keep it going. If you guys like ketamine, you gotta try what these studs are having. But, stemming off of a biological mechanic as abomination, you may ask, how can an irradiated wasteland of a planet produce enough guardsmen to sustain their endless waves in the wars of attrition? Well, sometime in the hundreds of years of war, Colonel Yurden began to succumb to the nuclear devastation that he unleashed. And on the Colonel's deathbed, Magos Grill suggested that he use the arcane vitae wombs and genetic sorcery in order to ensure the planet was protected by the great warrior even past his death. However, Yurden strongly opposed this abhorrent prospect and died soon after. Unluckily for him, though, the Magos was the only one to witness his death, and he did as he pleased. Don't use the vitae wombs.
What? What was that? I forgot to oil my mechano ears. I think I heard use the Vitae wounds though. If you so wish.
So, Grill used the esoteric vitae wombs. What exactly these are is unknown, but it's implied it's either some kind of cloning machine or genetic editor to make soldiers of Yurden's caliber, or even just a simple artificial incubation chamber. I personally think that the incubator with genetic editing capabilities makes the most sense. There's some evidence for the cloning theory since they almost always wear masks, vitae wombs are taboo, and the Imperium generally doesn't like cloning. Also, some of the Krieg colonels have identified themselves as Yurden long after his death. But also, it's not unheard of for soldiers to take on the name of Imperial heroes, so. And there's also compelling evidence against the cloning theory since there are men and women in the regiment, and Krieg tankers don't actually always wear their masks. It seems most likely to me that the vitae wombs are artificially inseminated to facilitate much faster birth rates, and somewhere along the process they're modified to prevent mutations and introduce favorable traits from notable warriors such as Yurzen. Whatever it is, though, we know is suspicious, it allows Krieg to be mass produced, and it kind of makes them weirdos. But, weird or not, it was likely vital to the regiment's survival. So, 15 grueling generations, hundreds of miles of trenches, and billions of lives later, the Death Chaps of Krieg finally won their planet back and returned to the Imperium triumphant. But upon reporting that the planet was reclaimed, the Imperium didn't really care and just were like, okay, good for you. Make sure you pay your tithes now. And pay their tithes now they did. The Munitorum requested a single regiment from the Krieg, but they sent 20 whole regiments. Furthermore, the commanders of these regiments requested that they be sent to the absolute worst war zones in order to repent for their past sins. You see, even though the Kriegers successfully reclaimed their world and weren't even actually the ones who became traitor, they still had immense guilt over their plan's betrayal and the fact that they didn't reclaim it faster. So, they created a cult of sacrifice in which the average Kriegsman saw themselves as simply a resource to achieve the Emperor's will. As such, they have little regard for their own lives as long as it furthers their goals. However, this does not mean that they are suicidal like some other irksome memes like to push. Them being willing to die does not exactly translate to them wanting to die. They want to earn atonement through death, and this means doing something that will help the cause, not just hugging a mine or kissing a berserker. Think about it like this. You have a bunch of bullets, they're expendable by nature. However, you aren't just gonna mag them into some dirt when there's heretics to blast. Krieg are the same way. They're resources. They're expendable, but they're not to be wasted. Commanders and soldiers who act wastefully and stupidly are loathed by Krieg culture as they are squandering the Emperor's resources. So, generally, the Death Corns are actually quite a tactical force that leverages their extreme numbers to win battles. However, they do tend to sometimes be a bit short sighted, prioritizing short term destruction at the expense of the long term. This can needlessly elongate wars, but luckily, they're used to long, miserable wars, so it's all good. Anyways, after returning to the Imperium, being cleared by the Inquisition, and battling in the worst war zones, they proved their mettle and rose to become one of the greatest regiments in the Imperium. The planet of Krieg exclusively exports guardsmen, and the near endless guardsmen of Krieg are a valuable asset to the Imperium as a disposable hose of men to point at whatever problem they need to extinguish. Krieger training virtually starts at birth. Young Kriegers have their minds broken and reforged to have an iron resolve. Then they're rigorously trained to survive in the harshest of conditions. And if they make it past that, they get to go to the surface of Krieg as their final test. Whoopee! On the surface, they put their trains to the test in the nuclear wastelands. Here, they participated in live fire mock battles, clear minefields, and learn how to dig trenches. Oh my god! Shovels! Ah! Then, when that's all over, they get shipped out to the various war zones of the galaxy. Much like the legendary Cadian shock troopers, the Death Corps are one of the few regiments trusted to field combined arms regiments. This usually comes in the form of their famous siege regiments. The siege regiment's general tactic is to unleash unrelenting artillery bombardments upon the enemy from basilisks, medusas, and even mortars. These artillery barrages can last for months as the Krieg forces hide in fortified trenches until their enemy is crushed. Then, when their enemies are sufficiently broken, they send in endless waves of infantrymen to clean up. Their preferred transport are Gorgon assault carriers, Hades breaching drills, or just a good old fashioned mass infantry charge. The Kriegers are most famous for their grim resolve and strong morale in battle. Seeking atonement, they're usually willing to face any of the myriad horrors of the galaxy. I say usually because, once again, unlike their memes and Reddit lore, the Krieg aren't wholly unbreakable. They're still humans at the end of the day, and they have broken in the past and retreated. Also, I could just be mistaken here, so please let me know if I missed it, but to my knowledge, the Commissars being killed by Kriegers for order and retreats thing doesn't really have any basis in lore. The only time I can remember a Krieger killing a Commissar was actually so that they could retreat because they got spooked by the overwhelming Chaos forces on Frax. However, Krieg Commissars do tend to serve a bit of a different purpose in Krieg ranks. Kriegers are usually grim weirdos, and as such, many other regiments are off-put by their presence. So, one of the main duties of Krieg Commissars is to basically convince the other Imperial forces that Kriegers aren't too weird, and to try and coordinate strategies to complement the Krieg's lack of self-preservation. Anyways, another special unit that the Krieg have on top of their Death Riders and pretty unique commissars are their quartermasters, who are actually kind of similar to Marine apothecaries in that they're medics and they scour the battlefield retrieving valuables of their fallen comrades. However, to Kriegers, the guardsman himself is not valuable. Their equipment is. So, quartermasters go around scavenging any useful equipment from fallen Kriegers, and they usually drop a quick little prayer for those lost. They also analyze battlefield stats such as ammo usage, casualty rates, and territorial gains in order for Krieg Command to take into account. Then we have their Grenadiers, which are the Stormtrooper equivalents. Unlike the much superior Kazarkin, the Grenadiers aren't specially recruited. Rather, they're made up of veteran survivors of destroyed squads. They're given heavy carapace armor, special weapons, and they're set on suicide missions to lead charges and destroy enemy fortifications. These dudes are more similar to heavily armored infantry than spec ops like other stormtroopers, but they still kick ass and they look sick as hell. Honestly, I think they're the second coolest looking stormtroopers. After Kazarkin, of course. Then next up, we got the Death Corp engineers who break enemy defenses, create trenches and tunnels for subterranean battles, and act as sappers. These guys are equipped with shotguns, mines, and a variety of grenades. And these would be the real shovel men if we must have one. Except more often they're using drills and such. But you know what? I'll give them the shovels this time. They also utilize the special mole launchers, which shoot breaching torpedoes called moles, which is pretty cute. Also, it seems like GW is merging the engineers with the grenadiers, which, if true, is super lame as they serve different roles and they're cool on their own. But finally, for special Krieg stuff, their lasgun is the Lucius pattern, which trades rate of fire for a more powerful shot. But we all know it's just to fit that World War vibe. Speaking of which, the death crops of Krieg are of course based on the forces of World War One, not just the German ones too. This is another meme that makes them a lot less interesting to me. The Krieg are an amalgamation of every World War force, which is one of the coolest aspects of them. The German influence is obviously the most apparent due to their name, but their uniforms are predominantly French looking, the helmet is a mix of French and German stylings, they have motifs of German lobster armor, the respirator looks British mixed with other styles, and there's other stylistic things in the infantry and vehicles that allude to other World War armies. But for the most important question of all, do I hate Krieg? No, not really. In fact, I think they're one of the coolest regiments. I also think it's really cool how they perfectly embody one of the core facets of the Guard with the near infinite numbers and sacrifices. But as I've alluded to before, I just really hate the memes about them. Just like most memes just reduce the facts into the most surface level observations, and misconceptions actually make them a lot less cool than they actually are. Which also, admittedly, Krieg lore has been somewhat inconsistent with how they're depicted. Sometimes they're basically robot men, other times they're callous but still human. The latter being a lot more interesting to me. Not only does it highlight what makes the Guard cool to me, but it's also the tragedy of a million soldiers trying to suppress their humanity to atone for a sin they didn't commit. I think that is so much more interesting than actual automatons. If I wanted mindless automatons, I'd play Suns, Necrons, or even technically Nids. I personally like the Guard because of the humanity and because it's humans standing up to the wackiness of 40k. But I also know different strokes for different folks, so if you like that, good for you. More power to you. But luckily, Krieg fans are masters of attrition and they can weather the endless waves of dumb memes and misunderstandings for the faction. However, all that said, Katie is still number one. Woo! But anyways, that's the Death Corners of Krieg. They're a very cool faction. Not my personal favorite, but I understand the appeal. They have a very cool aesthetic, Endless War is very 40k, and the grim demeanor is interesting. Also, they actually make quite a power couple, the Cadians. Their mastery of attrition would actually complement the Cadians' adaptability and mobility on a galactic level. But anyways, thanks again to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video. Check out the link in the description if you're interested. And thank you for watching, and thank you to all the Patreons who helped me to make these cool videos. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your shovelly shovels. Thanks! Also, I know it's a Deathcore of Krieg, but you gotta admit, the slight pun at Death Corps is pretty cool, and it's funny to mispronounce it, so...